Hello, everybody. I'm Sable. This is the Full Out Healing podcast and show where I talk about and share my journey as a survivor. Now, today is 100 Days of Truth, day 30, and this is episode number 24. And today's episode is going to be another healing tool of the day. And now on Healing Tool of the Day episodes, excuse me. Now, the healing tool of the day is getting curious about unwelcome thoughts. In this episode, I'm going to talk about the dilemma that brought this up, my old strategy for dealing with unwelcome thoughts, that moment of surrender that really facilitated and really just brought me to my knees to change something. My new strategy for dealing with unwelcome thoughts, what it does for me, and of course an invitation for you. Now, getting curious about unwelcome thoughts. Now, the dilemma that sort of brings even this strategy up is, of course, unwelcome thoughts. Not just unwelcome thoughts, intrusive thoughts about, in this instance, about my business. Which I talk about my work in education because, intimate partner violence had a profound impact on the way that I could show up in my field. And, I did the crazy, bold, courageous, maybe delusional thing, and I chose to start my own business because I felt frustrated by the scale and scope of change I could implement working for anyone else. And I really just was like, it came to a fuck it moment. I was like, I need to do this my way or I'm leaving the field. So I chose to start my own business. And that choice, embarking on doing your own business journey, it's really challenging because there's so many things you have to unlearn in order to be, not even just to be successful, but in order to take the action and take the risks that require your business to thrive. And I, along with all of the unlearning that has to happen, is unlearning around being an imposter. I have and continue to have such a clear vision for what I'm meant to do on this earth as it relates to education, as it relates to closing opportunity gaps for all Black children. And even though I feel very clear on that, I also, and have always felt clear on that, I also felt like an imposter, not like a real business owner, because I didn't have a certain website, or I didn't have employees, and it was just me. And the reality is that, surviving, I started my business while I was married. And the reality is that surviving abuse, it provided, I was navigating situations. I was, I was surviving violence. I was surviving not just physical abuse, but emotional abuse and psychological abuse, and the impact of that, and how it impacted my capacity, how it impacted, just literally surviving trauma and being in a constant state of dissociation really impacted what I could do. And it really confused me, and it changed my understanding of who I am as a person. I thought, man, I was so productive. I could do all these things. And it was sort of, in some ways that was true, and in some ways it was driven by toxic work culture. But there were just all of these things tangled up that were ultimately tied to what I perceived as my value and my worth. And the impact of all of this abuse and how it impacted what I wanted to do and create, it just gave me more evidence and more proof to feed all the negative self-concept, to feed all the negative imposter thoughts. Like, of course I'm not a real business owner. I can't even get this done. Parentheses, because you just survived an all-nighter of like raging and slammed doors and you literally haven't slept in 36 hours. So that part of your brain that stores that beautiful vision is locked up. That's that's the major parentheses that I didn't really integrate. But, and even though even though I physically left the abuse, like I was still with me, I was still with my brain, I was still with my body, and I brought all of those things with me. And so that the dilemma is really the vestiges of those things popping up in my head, uninvited. And not only was it uninvited, it would then, take space. And then when it takes space, it would really change my mood. And when it changed my mood, it really, this is the worst than changing my mood, is the ability of this to shift my momentum. That was just, I just feel so like frustrated and devastated by that, because that would impact my ability to trust myself. I'd be like, see, you can't even do that. Like, which would lead to this whole other vicious cycle. And so the old strategy and the old way I used to deal with this is I would believe the thoughts. I would believe the unwelcome thoughts. Then I would use that thought as proof of that, as proof of all the negative things I believed about myself. And then I would think my way into a smaller world, a predetermined world, and a world of inevitable defeat. And then it really just became about protecting myself from the shame of that inevitable defeat, which led to more smallness and more shame and more disappointment. Now, my moment of surrender, there were kind of a few moments, but I noticed the theme of it was that I started to recognize my thoughts in other people's stories. So if I would listening to different podcasts of like different entrepreneurs who are like sharing their like unwelcome thoughts, it literally would catch me off guard. I'd be like, oh shit, you have that. It felt familiar. And then it would surprise me. Like there was a sense of surprise around that familiarity. And then I'd be like, well, if it feels familiar, then I guess I'm thinking these thoughts. Oh shit, like these thoughts are like water in my mind. And like I'm a fish in the ocean. I didn't even register that these are the thoughts that are running through my mind constantly. And being able to recognize my thoughts in other people's story helped me realize that my thoughts are not who I am. I am the person thinking the thoughts, but I am the consciousness that is thinking the thoughts, but those thoughts are not me. And there's just like a sense of relief of when I'm like reminded of that, and like when I'm just like, oh, this thought isn't me. And then I think the beauty of having that awareness is that it offers just enough of a crack. Like it offers just enough doubt for me to be able to like slide in the question, what if this is not true? And it doesn't have to, I really want to emphasize like just enough doubt, just enough of a crack for even that question to float. Because one misconception I had about this work is that, if I don't hear it once and then totally abandon my belief and then take on this new belief, then like, I'm being so stuck, I'm not pushing myself, I'm not doing the work, like why am I da-da-da-da-da? It's just such a serious misconception that that having awareness is all you need, that you require for change. Like, it's literally just the first fucking step. And I would really hold myself to that really harsh standard of like, wow, now that I know this is true, then it should be stopped immediately. The same thing could be said about global warming. Humans know that it's true. Even the ones denying it know that it's true. They just don't care. Like, so awareness isn't helping us. It's just the first step of a journey. And that crack just offered just enough to help push me further along the journey to be like, what if this is true? Now, so with that being said, now my new strategy for unwelcome thoughts popping in uninvited is to get curious about them. Now, and to me, getting curious about my unwelcome thoughts is kind of like having a thought about my thought. Like, I notice it without judgment. And that looks like, like, okay, wow, you don't think you can do this, or wow, you're feeling like, or the thought is, no one's gonna care about this, or you're never gonna be able to survive and make money doing this. That's an interesting thought. Getting curious looks like, where did you come from? Thought. And this question I love even more, because this tells me what to do. The next question I ask myself is, what are you trying to tell me that little Sable needs right now? And that one, just stops me in my tracks, because it really causes me to pump the brakes, take a step all the way back, and to sit and think, if I'm having this thought, it makes me instead think that there's a part of me that needs something. Maybe it's reassurance. Maybe it's like she wants to see me take action. Maybe it's just to be acknowledged that this is scary, that, hey, I'm doing some scary ass shit. Like, can we pause for a moment, take a breath? And I think it's which often that's what it comes down to. And I think it's especially just like with the example I'm giving about my business and it being an entrepreneur, I just forget to acknowledge that, because literally everything is scary all the time, especially at this stage of my business, and scariness just becomes normal. But and in some ways it's normal part of the experience, but it doesn't mean that little Sable is cool with this shit. Like, she needs to be like tended to. And the answer to that question, maybe it's pausing, maybe it's shifting around my priorities, maybe it's there's something I know that I need to do, but I'm afraid to do it. And holding back on that scares little Sable. Like, little Sable, she's the realist. Like, I'm so on her side. And even though she's not in the driver's seat anymore, like, she really does have my back, because she holds the key to me to understand so many things about myself. And when I pause long enough to connect to her and to ask her and to figure out, what is this bringing up for you, then it's sort of like the floodgates. And even the most challenging situation, just checking in with her invites so much ease. And yeah, so I kind of got into this next section, is what does it do for me? Well, it relieves pressure. It relieves a lot of pressure, and it helps me take back my mind. It's unwelcome thoughts. I don't even necessarily have to check them. But just recognizing that they're thoughts and I am not it, and I can ask it questions, just those acts take up more space in my mind, and my mind is mine now. Like, it doesn't have all the space to spin all these damn tales and take up all my brain space. Like, no. Another thing that it does for me is it makes my inner world a much safer place. When I get curious about my unwelcome thoughts, I just like the whole nature of it is very self-compassionate and empathetic and non-judgmental. And I don't demonize my thoughts. When I do the strategy, I don't demonize my thoughts. They're just thoughts, and I'm not adding like shame and disappointment to myself for having thoughts I'm not supposed to have. I'm not judging myself saying like, oh, this means you're so further back. You did all this progress and where did it go? Like, there's none of that pressure. And it's just like my mind, my inner world is a nicer place to be and a safer place to be because I recognize the thought as just that. And it makes it so much nicer to be in my inner world. It also really helps me meet my own needs. That check-in with little Sable it really boils down to finding out what is a core unmet need and then finding a way to give that to myself, which is really awesome because, little Sable, she would try to get that need met whether or not I checked in with her. It would just happen in an unconscious way. And but by bringing consciousness to it, I can have agency around it and actually meet it. When little Sable shoves her way into the driver's seat and unconsciously takes over the show, then I superficially meet the needs, and it just recreates experiences that trigger more shame and more disappointment because I was chasing something that provided a temporary relief, but it really didn't get to the root. And so that's the difference. I can sort of meet my unmet needs from my adult chair, so to speak. And then once I'm able to meet my own needs, it actually becomes really easy to move on from that thought and to leave it in the past. It literally becomes a part of my past, which is amazing. And that's another reason why I'm annoyed about the whole awareness is all you need to change. I think awareness is all you need to start changing. And there's just so much processing and deep work that needs to come with the awareness, as a result of the awareness, because it certainly wouldn't be possible without it. And it's just it's only after doing this is it possible to let it go. Then letting it go, it feels easy, then letting it go, by the time I work through this process, it's already gone. I don't even have to let it go. It let itself go because it did what it came here to do. The unwelcome thought delivered a message, and I opened the package and I read the package and I made a decision based off of what that information had, and then the package was gone. And so getting curious about unwelcome thoughts, it is such a game changer. I guess I want to end with inviting you to do the same. I invite you to try this strategy. I invite you to, observe yourself, observe your thoughts and feelings and the stories you tell, and the beliefs that pop up as you try this strategy. What do you notice? And to notice it without judgment, just that's information, and reflect on what you learned from yourself. Maybe you realize, wow, this is really hard for me to do. It's bringing up all of this shame and shoulds. I guess there's a lot of shame and shoulds that are in this space that need to be tended to. Information learned, strategy successful. Okay? So that's my invitation to you. Alternatively, if you already use this strategy, I'm so curious, how does it work for you? I'd love to know more about your experience with it, and how has this strategy supported you in your healing journey? I would love to know that. But yeah, that is episode 24, healing tool of the day, getting curious about your unwelcome thoughts. 100 Days of Truth, day 30. Woo-hoo. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Bye, y'all.